Hello and welcome back to another Classic WoW video. Today we are covering my gold making plan in Classic WoW step by step, starting with what I do first and what I will do last, basically step by step from the beginning of Classic till way into Classic. You can make tons of gold simply by following some of these methods, but I really do think the entire combination is what will make it all work. Put it like this, if you follow step 1 you might make 100 gold, if you follow step 2 you might make 200 gold, but if you combine both steps you might make 500 gold. That is basically my thinking when it comes to this entire plan. I do also want to make gold both actively and passively, meaning that as we get further into Classic I want to maximize my gold earned per time spent and set up as many passive gold making methods as possible. I do also want to take a moment to shout out my Classic WoW Discord at the beginning of this video in case any of you want to join. Basically I share some of my gold farms, gold making methods and also screenshots of which items I invest in before I make videos about them. So if you want to know more about how I make my gold before it goes live on YouTube, make sure you join the Discord. It's also a great place to make friends with similar interests as yourself, seeing as most of my community will consist of people who are into gold making in one way or another, and therefore it could be a great place to share ideas and learn from each other. I do also live stream on YouTube quite often where I test out different gold farms to see if they're worth doing while hanging out with chat. If you want a notification of when I go live, you can either click the bell next to the subscribe button or join my Discord, since I usually post there before I go live to let people know in advance. So I think it's about time we start talking about the ultimate, or my ultimate, gold making plan in Classic WoW. Step 1. Pick up skinning while leveling. Skinning will make you roughly 150 gold over the course of your leveling process if you skin every beast you kill. This number will fluctuate depending on which questing route you take and if you choose to farm any beast for gold or experience while leveling, but I would say anywhere in between 100 and 200 gold, so we'll say 150. Skinning is extremely valuable while leveling, especially since you can't really have both mining and herbalism, since you can only track one type of node at a time on the minimap. Therefore, picking up for example skinning plus herbalism and sending all of the herbs to a different character to either send it back to your main once you drop skinning or level alchemy on a different character will be the best way to acquire gold efficiently while leveling, and it will also be the most efficient use of professions. Step number 2 is investing in items. The earlier you invest, the more gold you'll make. At the beginning of Classic, people want to spend their gold on mounts, spell training, gearing their characters, leveling professions, and etc. Therefore, the supply of certain items like twink items, twink enchants, and maybe even high-end tier raiding items might be on high supply and very low demand, meaning the buyer will be able to control the price instead of the other way around. Usually the seller controls the price, especially on high commodity items, but this early in a game's release, the buyers have a unique ability to invest in items. Items I would personally invest in are level 19 twink items, level 29 twink items, materials used in molten core flasks and potions, since most people don't want to spend gold on flasks and potions yet, so the prices might be somewhat low because supply outweighs demand. And the materials used in enchants that we get for recipes from Naxxramas or Ankh-Kiraj are also great items to invest in. Also materials for nature protection potions, since they might also become relevant later in Classic. Basically it all depends on how long you want to sit on the item before you start making profit, since level 19 twinks can become relevant in phase 2, while Ankh-Kiraj is in phase 6. For a more specific list of items to invest in, check out my investing in items video, my first ever Classic WoW video. You can also find out which recipes drop from Ankh-Kiraj from my gold making with enchanting video, covering where recipes drop. Step number 3 is drop skinning on your main character and pick up a different profession, unless you plan on farming Devil Source or a lot of beast grinding. If you went with skinning plus herbalism, drop skinning and pick up alchemy, and send the herbs you picked up with herbalism back to your main and skill up alchemy. Alternatively, if you choose to stick with skinning, level up a different character to level 35 plus, and skill up alchemy on that alt. Being level 35 is important to learn the highest rank of alchemy to make the most powerful and profitable crafts. If you go the route of leveling an alt with an alchemy, I would recommend also picking up tailoring for a reason which we'll cover in step 5. Step 4. Farm gold. Whether you do this before skilling up alchemy or not is kinda irrelevant, but if you choose to level up an alt with alchemy instead of skilling alchemy on your main, I would go with this as step 3, because farming gold should have a higher priority than leveling a new character to 35+, especially since you just got to 60 on your main, and you might be a bit bored of leveling by now. Basically, the entire step revolves around farming as much gold as possible for then to revert back to step 2 and invest all that gold into items. Of course, you should prioritize learning important skills and having at least a 60% mount first, but I believe it's better to invest 1000 gold now and maybe get 5000 gold back in a year for them to buy the mount then, instead of spending all of your gold right now to buy the 100% mount. If you want to know which gold farms are the most effective, make sure you subscribe to my channel, as we already have 2 gold farming videos covered between 5 and 10 gold farms each. We have a 3rd gold farming video coming up soon, and we do gold farming streams almost daily. I want to give you as many viable gold farming alternatives as possible, so if one spot is too crowded, you have several more alternatives you can go for. You also need to farm some gold and have quite the stack for this next step, since it requires a lot of gold input and a ton of effort, but it will pay itself back tenfold over time. So with that segue, let's get into step 5. Step 5 is passive gold making. This is something that I very recently made a video about, so if you want to know about it more in depth, feel free to check out that video, since I spent like 11 minutes talking about it in that one video. Long story short, you level up several alts to level 35+, you skill up tailoring to the point where you can learn mooncloth, and you skill up alchemy to the point where you can learn transmute arcanite. Once you have these, you can either farm the felt cloth needed for the mooncloth craft, and the materials required for the arcanite transmute yourself and sell the actual items, or you can simply sell the craft cooldown, which is 2 days for arcanite and 4 days for mooncloth. The price of these crafts are insane, and you can make so much gold from it. The amount of gold you actually make will depend on how many alts you make, and the more alts you make and the more professions you skill up, the more gold you'll make. Step 6 is playing the auction house. So now you have some items that you've invested in, you have some starting capital, and you got a lot of passive gold income. This is when you take it to the next level and start playing the auction house. This step is not for everyone, and it requires a certain knowledge about the market on your server, and knowing how to use add-ons like TSM, Auctioneer or Market Watcher can be very handy to help you with the snipes, undercuts and flips. I'm not going to bore you with a long version of this, but the basics involves you buying out every single unit of an item on the auction house for them to repost it at a higher price and make profit. This is called flipping. Sniping basically means scouting the auction house or using an add-on to scan the auction house, and if an item shows up extremely cheap, you buy it. Step 7 is cross-faction auction house manipulation. This step requires you to have 2 accounts, one account with alliance characters, the other account with horde characters, on the same server. Certain items and maybe the entire market can be different from one faction to faction, and this is where you can make bank. You need 2 characters minimum per account, 1 stationed at your local auction house, 1 stationed at a neutral auction house. If an item sells cheaper on Horde than on Alliance, you buy the item, send it to your character at the neutral auction house, post it for a copper, buy it on your Alliance character at the neutral auction house, send it to your Alliance character at a regular auction house and make profit. It sounds kinda complicated, but it's very easy. But it requires a lot of research, and instead of only knowing the economy on one faction, you now have to understand the economy of both factions, so it requires a lot more work. By doing this, you can also transfer gold between factions. Let's say you start as an alliance, but after 6 months you want to get into cross-faction trading, but you don't want to farm gold on a new faction to get some gold. You simply go to the neutral auction house on your horde character, throw some junk on there for let's say 200 gold, and buy it on your alliance character. That way you directly transfer 200 G from your alliance character to your horde character. If I were you, I would not start doing this by splitting my gold in 2 or in half. I would probably keep 80% on my main faction and send 20% to my secondary faction, but this all depends on how much gold you have. I would try to send at least 100 gold to the other faction, meaning you would have 400 gold on your main faction if you follow the 20-80 split. This method can be very effective because certain items are more accessible to Horde than Alliance, like for example Deviate Fish. Also, certain items are used in Alliance quests, and different items are used in Horde quests. The ones needed for Alliance quests might be dirt cheap on the Horde side, but very expensive on the Alliance side. Also, there might be more gold farmers on the Alliance side, which means the economy on the Horde side would be way worse and everything would be cheaper. These are all examples, but I just wanted you to understand the factors you need to consider, and that cross-trading really is worth it if you do enough research. Step number 8 is boosting. This is the one that may net you the most amount of gold per hour when it comes to consistency, and with the least RNG involved. While doing regular gold farms you need to hope for good drops. While playing the auction house you need to have some type of luck and a lot of knowledge. There is some RNG involved and also a lot of risk. With the passive gold making methods you make the most gold per time spent, but you can't really do those crafts 24/7 because you need a million alts. So if you have some time left over, boosting might be a very good idea. Let's say a level 10 alt wants a Deadmines boost. He might pay you 5 to 10 gold for that. If you're a mage or a priest you can simply face pull everything and kill them with one Holy Nova or Arcane Explosion. Stormwind Stockades and Ragefire Chasm are also very popular dungeons because they are so easily accessible and also good experience per hour for people leveling, so people might pay you gold to boost them through there. It's also a nice way to gear up while leveling. Also, Hunters and Warlocks can effectively solo dungeons like Maraudon and the Dire Maul, especially last bosses, to sell certain item drops, one of which is best in slot for classes who use attack power, aka the Ring from Princess in Maraudon. These types of dungeon farms can be very effective and very good gold per hour in themselves, and if you have the gear or experience to actually solo them and boost others through them, you can net a crazy amount of gold from doing that. You can also sell certain item drops like the best in slot ring to people, and they can pay you crazy amount of gold for doing this. So there it is, my gold making plan for Classic step by step. It did become a bit longer of a video than I would personally like, but I wanted to explain every step to the point where it's understandable, while not over-explaining it, if that makes sense. Make sure you let me know in the comments how you're planning to make your gold both short-term and long-term. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you slap a like on it, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.